Hello, everybody, and welcome to this EMCC Global GPS Dialogue with Jo Birch and Shirley Smith. So excited for this session. We're looking at accessing the power of sound and rhythm in service of deeper dialogue. And we were talking just before you arrived about how different things have different sounds. But if you're then describing what that sound is or the expectation of that sound, how does that then affect your own understanding about what you're conveying, what you're receiving, the kind of interactions that you're going to have? So we may have preconceived ideas about what those sounds are going to be, or we may have nothing at all. We may reflect back what we think the other person wants to hear, but perhaps not. But anyway, this is a fantastic and a fascinating topic of conversation. And I'm going to hand it straight over to you, Shirley.
And so I thought we would start by playing with just the rhythm of our names. One thing I like to do with groups is very early with groups is bring everybody's voice into the space. And one way to do that is to ask each person to say their name how they say their name. So my name is Shirley, and I say it with a very Scottish accent, I'm afraid. I can't get rid of the Scottish accent, but it's Shirley. And I live here in Vienna at the moment. And for local people, that's a very unusual name. Typically, they haven't heard of it unless they know a singer or a film star that's called Shirley. But otherwise, there's very few people with that name here. We know from the group that this is a very international audience. So there's a chance that there's quite a few names here today too that are strange to our ears, and we're not used to hearing people with those names. So if we could do this, Nicola, can I invite you to join in with us just for this wee second?
Here I am.
So we're going to try with Jo's name first. So Nicola and I are going to repeat back to Jo how she says her name. So you say your name, Jo, and then Nicola and I will repeat it back, noticing how Jo says her name, and with us trying to repeat that rhythm and quality of sound.
Okay. So, Jo.
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 Yeah. Thank you. So now, Nicola, you can have a go. And Jo and I will repeat back how you say your name.
Nicola.
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 And so now I'm going to have a go. And Jo and Nicola, you can repeat back. Shirley.
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 So now we're going to do that again. I noticed that I didn't do it very well repeating your names, even a simple name like Jo. I did notice that you said it differently to how I said it. But this time we're going to do it again and be much more conscious of the rhythm. So for example, Jo's name is a very easy name because it's kind of one syllable. So we know it's a Jo. It's not Jo, it's Jo. So Nicola, if you get two of your instruments, whatever you've got.
I've got my eardrops.
You've got your eardrops.
And I've got my, what else have I got? Oh, I've got my tissue.
Oh, interesting. So with one or both of those, we're going to do the same again. So Jo, you have a go with your name first, and we'll repeat back, giving the rhythm this time with our whatever.
Jo.
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 Jo. So you'll notice there was some deliberate movement to make that single syllable sound. Okay, Jo, we're now going to have a go with Nicola.
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 and I'll let you go with my name.
Shirley.
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 Yeah, so it's got a different rhythm, doesn't it? There's and I noticed you moved differently with those to make that sound, or to reflect the rhythm in that sound. So just to get started, let's do that in our threes very, very quickly. I don't know that we need more than, well, you need to say hello. Shall we say 8 minutes? Does that work, Jo?
I think 10, yeah, because the hello takes a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
Do
okay.
say hello to each other.
Do give me a second just to get me last little NBR sorted, and also a shout.
And
if you haven't NBR'd already, then, and you need to, then do that, otherwise I'll...
And really notice when we're coaching, we're trying to really pay attention to the person that we're with. So what we're doing in this exercise is really breaking it down into that real attention on the tonality and the rhythm of something. And think about how that relates to your coaching and supervision, but we'll talk about that later.
So welcome back, Jo. I think you wanted to say a few things about creative supervision before we do a little bit of feedback, how that went for you all.
Yeah, we'd love to know what you noticed in that really simple reflection. And we thought of mentioning, when we're working with creative approaches, whether that's dance or drama or painting or objects, there's so many different things we can work with. We can have a conversation without words at all. With our hands, we can use myriad different ways. And the thing is that we're inviting in some awareness that we weren't previously aware of. And that really is the essence of coaching in a way. We're inviting people to find insights or a new awareness. And in the nature of that, the new thing might be something that we weren't expecting. And especially with creative approaches, because it's tapping into some other sensory knowing in a person, in ourselves or in the other. And therefore, working with creative approaches, we just need to be mindful that the thing that arrives is probably something out of our current awareness. And it might be something we welcome knowing or finding out, discovering. And it might also be something surprising and maybe even unwelcome into our space. And so whenever we're working with creative tools, being mindful that the other person, the person that's working with their creativity, needs to lead the process. And their words are the right words. So Shirley's banana might, the sound of that, although I couldn't hear it on Zoom, I might interpret it quite differently to the interpretation of Shirley. And it really doesn't matter what my interpretation is. What matters is what's Shirley's narrative around this sound, or whatever other approach. And so just to be mindful that when you are working in groups, really tune into how the other person is describing their phenomena, whatever that is, because in some way they're inviting you into a personal and hitherto, previously private part of their knowing. So in the Johari's window, if you're familiar with that, it's the part that I don't know myself and you don't know. For example, why I didn't want to choose this morning something that had a harsher sound, and I chose the muesli in the cup. And I could discover what that means for me today, that I don't currently know. I just chose a few things. So if at any point you have any thoughts or questions that you want to share, do put them in the chat, and Nicola will be monitoring that. And we would really love to pick up things that you are interested in, because Shirley and I are interested in everything that we're going to talk about today, but we really want to know, what are you interested in? So Shirley, you said we're going to have some popcorn, which is simply an invitation to jump off mute and notice what you notice and share in service of the group.
So I'm going to need a bit of Nicola's help here, just with my own techie setup at this end. It's not that easy for me to see who's putting up their hand or would like to speak, though. Nicola, if you can help here.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
there's anyone in the group at all who would like to make a few comments or share for everyone's benefit how that went in your breakout sessions, or what you noticed about working with
Elena's got a hand up. Unmute.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Great. Hello, everybody. Now, what I noticed, what Jo said in the beginning, she was already prepared. You know, she knew what she's going to do before we came in. So she was ahead with the, you know, I didn't want to choose something which has good harsh sound. I wonder if when we go to supervision or when we coaching, sometimes we already know kind of, you know, what we want to say, and we choosing in ourselves, yes, I'm going to talk about it, but I don't want to touch that because that would be too much. So that's one observation. And the other observation from our breakup room is that in the beginning, I really liked how people pronounce my name with really, you know, intensity. They really try to pronounce it. And towards the end, I just felt a bit exposed. Suddenly it was like, oh my goodness, somebody's pronouncing my name over and over again. You know, so it became somehow, oh, that's starting a bit too much to be. So that's me.
That's an interesting thing, saying about my name, people saying my name too often, or hearing my own name said too often. When you do this with a group, it's a good idea to sort of set a rhythm that, or set it in a way that the person says their name and then the group all together say the person's name, not like everybody 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That didn't quite work this morning. However, that would be my recommendation if you try it out with a group, is really to demonstrate or give clear instructions that it works like that. So, because it's not really about, there's multiple things going on with that exercise, because it's all, one of the main things is to listen for how someone else is saying their name and to tune into them a little bit, but also that everyone's voice is brought into the room multiple times, right from the beginning.
Yes.
In a very super safe way. So that's the idea behind it. So I'm sorry if you felt a little bit strange, but maybe we're just not used to that, that level of attention.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I felt. Do I deserve it even? Do I deserve people repeat my name properly? Because for 26 years, somebody was saying to me different names, not trying to do it properly. So, yeah.
I think in our work as, Lydia, I can see you there, but just let me pick up this. In our work as coaches and supervisors, this is really, really important. You know, we are giving our attention to someone. We are hanging on their every word, or at least that would perhaps be our intention, to really notice this person in a way that maybe they haven't been noticed before. And I know myself, when I first trained as a counsellor, so I know Eleanor and some other people are counsellors here, somebody listened to me talk for 2 minutes. It was the longest 2 minutes in my life. I couldn't imagine that anyone would listen to me for 2 minutes. Of course, now I can talk a bit longer. However, that's sometimes our coaching clients, that an hour is a long time to have the focus on you, and supervision even more so, and in a group. So Eleanor mentioned everyone saying her name. Yeah, so picking up that, and also picking up the notion about, I didn't want to bring something harsh because it's about me. And do I bring things that are going on for me when I am a supervisor and a coach into the session before we even start? And that is a great question to be asking myself, and for you each to notice, coming simply out of a box of muesli and a bit of plastic. So back to you, Shirley and Lydia.
Yeah, I think we'll hear what Lydia's got to say. There's something I wanted to pick up, and also there's some interesting things going on in the chat, I see. So we will come to that too. So Lydia, maybe you go first.
It's a great exercise, really very complex. So I enjoyed it very much, but I wanted to share the experience from our small group. Actually, it's a great way to give everybody a chance to voice and to tune in. But actually, I realized then when I was listening to others, really trying to notice how to pronounce it and try to pronounce it myself, it really helped me too to tune with myself and with the group. So it was a two-way process, and that really was great.
Thank you. Yeah. I noticed when I repeated back Nicola's name that I didn't say it the way she said it. And I for a few seconds felt, oh, I was really irritated at myself for not being able to copy exactly how the intonation or the way, the sort of rhythm and sound she made. Mm-hmm. And so that is, it's part of tuning into yourself too, of where you are, and do we need to then make a little bit of space to have another go? Because I so wanted with Nicola for her to feel I'd heard her. Yeah. Like Elena said, I'd heard her right. And I was able to reflect correctly, or as close as it's possible in this setup.
Yeah, Shirley, it's like a microcosm, isn't it, of a coaching or supervision session, showing, can see you, Pat, showing that you've heard or reflected correctly and what that does inside you. So as Lydia said, really noticing myself as I was trying to do this.
Hi there. I was really curious about this exercise because I was in a small group, and one of our group is South African, and her name, Nobekele, is something that I couldn't actually say because the first part of her name is a click, and I can't click. So there's something about, I was tuning into the fact that I actually could not physically do that exercise in that sense, because I could not say the name in the way that is actually said. And so there was something about noticing that the connection. So for me, I always want to say people's names and give respect to people in their names. I always really make a point of it. And because I couldn't, it was kind of noticing and saying, actually, I can't click. It's not within my kind of vocal ability to click, right? And there was real kind of warmth and empathy for that on behalf of Nobekele, who said this, okay, I know that, English people can't normally click, right? But the connection came where that could have been a disconnect. Oh, I can't do that. What had happened was that the connection was in the actual rhythm and the movement, and the connectedness was in that tonality, not necessarily the perfection of saying the name absolutely perfectly as it's usually said in Nobekele's language. So it was just kind of being aware for myself, being a perfectionist, trying to make sure, get it right, respect, honor people, and knowing that I couldn't do that, but I could still respect, honor, and connect, even though I couldn't actually do what was asked of me in the way that it was asked of me.
Yeah. Isn't that just lovely? In that what you've done is embodied, I think, I have a sense that you've embodied what the vibration of that name does to create it, or needs to create it. So it's the embodying part, or creating the rhythm, however you created it, has allowed you to then meet in a different place. I'm getting goosebumps as we're talking about this, I have to tell you. I don't know what that's about, but.
Me too. And I think, you know, when we talk about working internationally and cultural similarities and differences, we can get into really complicated, I don't know, explanations. Whereas coming down to the very simple act of being able to say someone's name. Shirley comes from Scotland and I live in Scotland, just on a microcosm of this, and I can't say her name. You know, and let's take that across the entire world. There's Pat, unable to say do the first click of somebody's name, because our mouth has developed differently with language, but really starting to understand each other, starting with a simple thing of our name. There's a lot we can talk about names, of course, but that's another conversation. Shirley.
Somebody wrote, I didn't like how I sounded or something. Where did I see that?
Did you want to say any more about that? Who didn't like the way that you pronounced your own name? Oh, Eileen's also there, Shirley.
I'm happy to
pick
up on that. My name's, I'm going to say it how I want to say it now. My name is Neil. I have to practice that now. And I realized Neil. And I realized that when I first said it, it broke into 2 syllables. It was Neil. And I was like, that doesn't feel true. That feels broken. It doesn't feel whole. And very kindly, my colleagues enabled me to just play with it for a little while till I was comfortable. So thank you, Samira and Sheng. But very revealing.
Yeah, you know, I once did a retreat with the late Wendy Palmer. She wrote a book about leadership embodiment, and she invited us in this retreat to walk around for about 10 minutes just saying our name, and to notice what we notice as we do that, and to walk. So everyone just quietly said their name to themselves. You did speak it out, and then you become aware. So Wendy's wise words were, if you say a word, any word, 100 times, it loses its meaning and you become aware of the emotion it conveys. So there is something in, I'm going to try to attempt to say Neil. Neil's quite a common Scottish name, actually, spelt slightly differently, but it's a similar kind of thing. Mm. So I didn't find that too tricky, but if I said it correctly, to try that, for an invitation to everyone as you're walking down to the shops later today or tomorrow, to have a go at saying your own name 100 times, and then you will really feel the emotion that your name conveys at some level. Worth a try.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you too.
And Neil,
I'm
just going to respond to Neil as well about, you know, I felt very emotional because I thought sometimes we can pile pressure on ourselves about what is a coaching session or how am I going to be as a supervisor. And literally, we could do a whole session on this, the sound of a name. Just peel back, stop trying to do and be more, but simply be with each other and really see and hear them, so that we can hear ourselves. When Shirley first said, say your name, I was like, I didn't know she was going to do that exercise. And I was like, I don't even know how I say my name. So I really resonate, Neil, about how do I say Jo? Where do I take that breath before it? Jo, I realized I took a breath that I didn't know I took. Oh, wow. So, Shirley, back to you, Eileen, Mirelle, and Swasti.
Oh,
Eileen.
so Eileen, if you'd like to go first, nice to see you.
Hi, Shirley. Hi, Jo. It's on the similar lines of what Neil was saying and what you were saying, Shirley, is that I became very conscious of my name, and with Duncan and George, I find that I kept changing it. And when we got into that discussion, I raised it in the discussion, is that being international, sometimes we have to change the tonality of our name so that somebody else can hear it, and we can't make assumptions just because I say it in a Scottish way or an Australian way that people are going to get it. So I started to become very conscious, and Duncan has the same. I have the surname Duncan as well, and it's how we would say it as a Scot and how we would say it is, British or Australian or, to anybody else. We've become very conscious of our names. And in the end, I'm going, how do I say my name? So I'm very much aware of it. I like the idea of repeating it, but I'm sure I'll end up with different variations depending upon who I'm talking to. Most people, funny enough, get my name right overseas, across the Asia Pacific where I coach. Most people will get my name right. The people who get it mixed up is the people, because there's so many different spellings, as you know, in Scotland, and then you get different variations. Is it Aileen? Is it Eileen? Is it Eileen? Or is it this or that? So yeah, I just want to say you can become very conscious or over conscious that you can't say your name anymore. So thanks.
Thank you. Mirelle, is that the right way to say it? I don't know.
Yeah, no worry. Yeah, thank you, Shirley. Yeah, there's a few things, kind of based on my experience abroad as well. When I was starting in the UK, I realized quickly, sometime trying to book a train ticket to go to Northampton and trying my best English accent. And then, that I could not say things I couldn't hear, kind of. So, despite me thinking, and then the guy said, oh, and then repeats it. And I said, but that's exactly the same thing I said. And obviously he wasn't. It's just I couldn't hear the difference. So there was, kind of, I've kind of accepted that. And then to come back to the sense what you were saying, Shirley, for me, probably to be able to really, repeat well, I would have to, and I didn't do it obviously, but to close my eyes because it blocks the other senses, to be able to concentrate on my auditory, kind of, obviously is not something I would do in a session, but I feel if I close my eye and really concentrate on the sound, I can hear much more depth in the sound and the rhythm. And then what the exercise for me revealed is that we were saying our names is, I never realized I put the emphasis maybe more on my first name than on my second name when we did, kind of, and obviously I'm sure that has some meaning. And then again, it was lovely, they were saying, and living abroad and knowing my name is kind of somehow sometimes difficult to say. It was almost being strange. Oh, hang on, someone is saying my name really, kind of. So there was, a big element of novelty for me as well there, kind of, and for me trying to say correctly the name, kind of.
Yeah. I totally empathise with that thing of being in another country. The name Shirley is not that easy for Germanic speakers to say. So I have the same kind of have experienced similar kinds of topics. Mm-hmm. But it's funny what you were saying there about closing your eyes and shutting off the visual side of things. I did a quick research just before doing, coming here today, and our sense, we have our senses, and visual is by far and away the biggest one for us. So our brain is working something like, of the 100% capacity, visual is something like 80% of it. So it's a massive way that we take in information. The next biggest one, a mere 10%, is auditory. So by switching off the visual stimulation, it really allows you to amplify that dramatically. But here's the funny thing, that our brains can process sound much more quickly than it can process images. So what we hear comes in, we're interpreting that faster than what we see. So I've been experimenting the last while with conducting supervision sessions only using Zoom audio, switching the cameras off, and still doing applying lots of creative techniques, and it's absolutely possible. And the different nuances in what you pick up because of switching off the visual stimulation is, with practice, other senses develop for sure, or at least that's been my experience. Thank you.
You see Swasti's hand up too?
Yeah, Swasti.
Yeah, so for me, I think I kind of recognized through the exercise that I'd been saying this all throughout my life, that I don't care how my name is pronounced, and most often than not, it's pronounced incorrectly, even by people from my own country. And that kind of set me thinking, what am I trying to not address here? What is there that, so something about myself, like the deeper self-reflection. And the other thing that really strikes out is repeating my name, a few hundred times and seeing what happens, and there's an emotion behind it. And that kind of helps me reconnect with, I come from a culture where chanting is something, that's practiced so often. And for some reason, trying to kind of understand why that is, perhaps you kind of embody the sense of that chant within you. And that's the reason. And that sets me thinking, why have I been so resistant to chanting? Is there something to that? And then connecting back to what you were just saying, Shirley, and it's all kind of interconnected. Just now about, sorry, it skips my mind. What were you saying just now? Just the topic that you were talking about?
Now I've lost the thread as well. I'm listening to you.
Sorry.
Sound being processed more quickly.
Yes, totally. Thank you, Jo.
Yeah, and that brings to me, so I am a person who really likes and enjoys silence, and I'm wanting to, and I also live in Switzerland, that kind of helps even more. So I like to walk in areas where I can hear nothing but silence. So I was just trying to connect these three things as to myself, my unwillingness to hear sounds so much, and it's okay my name being pronounced any which ways. What's the connection? So this is something that I'm already taking from the session thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. So in a second, we're going to do another little exercise or take another step with that.
We've got Samira with hand up if we've got time to do.
Yes, absolutely. But our next session will pick up on just what you're saying there. So Samira, how does that sound?
Yeah, thank you to give me this occasion. I mean, for me, I was in reflection about myself, how I was dealing about things. So I feel very comfortable that we speak about the process first. And that's what I am missing sometimes in my work and in my country. And I felt safe in the space we create with Neil and Shank. And my name has a story because my grandmother didn't allow my dad to give me another name, which was Siham. And my 40, I did a birthday for myself to reconcile between Samira and Siham. And I had before sing my name, Samira, just because I wanted to choose this one, or making them together, say, before I was in process. And when I heard myself telling my name, I noticed that I accentuate. It's like it's something that on me that needed to make Samira stronger. Like I tell it like Samira, you know, I accent in him, and I felt that when Neil tell it, that he did the same. So it resonates on me. And when I wanted to tell their names, I felt that I wanted to do things exactly how they said. And it's a mirroring for me, because usually in my life, I want to give all the best for others. I make a lot of pressure on myself. And in the second round, because I couldn't hear the sound, I wanted to ask Neil to do it another time, so just I can memorize it, but I didn't ask for it because it's like, if I don't like to take a lot of space in the group. And it's also mirroring that how I act in the group. It's like my negative idea. Perhaps they will be very helpful and do it another time. And thank you a lot for this exercise, because it was about me with others and what happened on me. So for me, it's very, very deep exercise. And I'm thanking all of you for listening.
Thank you. So we have about 30 minutes left, I think, if I'm correct, Nicola. And we'd like to take another step. So Jo, what were we going to do? We're going to do another aspect of this. Where is Jo? I don't see Jo.
I am here.
You are here.
Yes, you're going to introduce the exercise, of course, and we're just going to notice that although there were a lot of personal insights, our attention was originally on listening to someone else's rhythm about their name, and then we learned things about ourselves. And so in the next exercise, Shirley's going to change that attention into yourself. Shirley.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. So when you do check-ins in your group coaching, or maybe one-to-one too, or supervision sessions, it's quite common at the beginning of a session to say, so how are you arriving today? An open invitation, and people will tell you how they are arriving. And we want to do this in a creative way now. And as Jo just said, bringing our attention to ourselves. So if I think about how am I arriving today, and I look at, just under the computer here, I'm looking down at a selection of things. And so if I bring this up, I don't know if you can hear this. I was playing with them earlier, thinking, how am I arriving to this session? And there was something about the, I'm quite, there's something about that excited. I don't know if you hear the tinkle of these two lemonade spoons touching each other, but something quite light-hearted, tinkly, that kind of thing. And then there's another part of me, because we also had, Jo and I had spoken about, we might do a demo if there's time. Well, there's no time for a demo now, but we did say, if depending how the conversation went, we might do a demo. So I did have that in my mind too. and deliberately choosing something that would help me with, that needed to reflect how that particular topic. So the tinkly thing, but there was also something that was very slappy that would make that thud kind of sound. So that's also present with me as I arrive in the session. Yeah, I think two's enough as a quick demonstration, because what we're going to do now is for a good 20 minutes, do you think? With 20 minutes work, and then
maybe,
so that you can have time to play with that in your threes, of finding the rhythm that shares how you are arriving to this session. You might need to find it. It might not. I've had the benefit of having played with these a little bit before the session started. And so I did have, for example, these are some chopsticks. I did think, oh, but that's not the right sound. I had to find the spoons. The spoons were the right sound for the rhythm rather than chopsticks.
I think as well, to go back to the beginning, Shirley, it's how we chose the things that we've got, that we arrived. And we'll play with the exercise. Then afterwards, think about what that relates to coaching and supervision. So you heard me say, that I didn't want anything, whatever word I used, which Eleanor remembered, but harsh.
Yeah.
And so I'm already tuning into myself, but in a non-conscious way. So I'm already thinking, oh yeah, I like the sound of that. And another thing that I've got is just book pages turning. And I loved the sound of that. And I thought, oh yes, that's something I want for me today. So these sounds were about my wishes and wants for me. And so the things that you've chosen may be something to talk about, as well as the sound and rhythm that they're making. And so what does this tell you about your process about coming into the session today? So yes, we've got about, 15 or 20, however long you think. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go in between 18 minutes, and that'll give us 12 minutes to wrap up at the end.
And so we've got about 9 minutes before the end, and we'd just love to hear from you. Anything you've noticed that you'd like to share, just like last time. Darius. Very conscious of whether I pronounce people's names right. So Darius, I'm going to see, and then Gamze, maybe? Good. Okay, Darius.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm very actually surprised in a good way about our room, about our talking. We had quite time to explain to each other what actually is going about and how we should present ourselves. And I am a musician, so for me, it is much about sound and much about rhythms, how you serve to each other, rather music or saying to someone, or just to, as we did practice, approaching someone with what kind of feeling you are come with, or how you can actually show it in sounds. So our room was quite interesting because I got very close to Claudia. We did see it similar way to be ready for the session. And I tried to explain on my instrument like that, like something what is accenting the, right now is the time for session, and then descending sounds. And then, for example, Debbie, she was more about tapping and tipping or tapping things and coming into the core of sound. So it's something what is trembling, something what is working inside us, and have some rhythm. So it's preparing you for the session, and that's how we are going to start. And the surprise was that, as always in music as well, we see things different. So it doesn't mean we do exactly the same things, but we can see them different way and we feel them different way. So that's what I observed here.
Gosh,
Thank you.
that's fascinating, Darius. I could ask you so many more questions as a musician about sound and what that means and how you use it. But I'm going to move on to Gamze and then Anita.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the whole session. It was really eye-opening. I noticed that it is not a habit for me to prepare sonically before the session, but it makes a real sense. So one thing is I'm going to make sure it becomes a habit and to listen to the rhythm of my mind, my soul and my body, and to align it before the session. Because what I do is kind of a breathing or calming exercises, but I think this makes me more playful. And the second is really educate the client when they're bringing the session. How are they coming? What is their rhythm? And try to make them more mindful about it. So I think this was kind of a good taking for me from today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Gamze.
I was
Anita.
going to
Oh, sorry,
just
Shirley.
jump in here when I'm thinking about using some of these techniques with people who are very heady. So when you're coaching, sometimes some executives are very much in their head, and something as simple as what we've done helps to let them connect with their body, perhaps for the first time, or something that they don't do very often. Thank you.
This was such a beautiful experience. We engaged in 2 very simple activities, but exercises, sorry. And I felt like this was an opportunity to really learn to listen again. And I understand where Darius is coming from, because I too am a student of music. And I had a coach mentor many years ago who performed on the Broadway, and she helped me understand the importance of what tonality, rhythm, and music in our speech can teach us. And what better way to learn that, or the beginning of that, than with our names. So what a beautiful experience. Thank you. I really feel like I'm learning to listen in a very different way again.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nicola, I don't know if you can remember the thing you said in our breakout room about the connection between listening and coaching.
Oh my goodness, no, absolutely. That really did hit me as we were talking. The fact that, well, there's so many things that came to me. One is is really listening to the emphasis that the person themselves places on parts of their names. Like I go Nicola, I go Nicola. If I go to America, the people say Nicola. I won't correct them, but then what does that say, about my own how I'm appearing? It's kind of important. Your name is important, isn't it? It's your identity. So the things are the emphasis that I place on my name, the emphasis that somebody else may place on my name, where that appears in my name, whether I correct them or not. Do I correct them? Do I not correct them? Am I happy with their interpretation of me? But actually, my interpretation of me is the important thing, surely, because that's my interpretation of me. And so it's the more you think about it, it's such a simple exercise, but the more you think about it, the more it really sort of opens up, am I listening? How am I listening? Am I really paying attention to what my client or my coachee or my supervisee is really saying? Or am I putting my own interpretation on it, reporting it back? And then are they having the confidence to say, actually, no, that's not what I meant, or that's not the emphasis that I placed on it? So simple, just such a simple exercise, but so much you can get out of it.
Thank you, Nicola. We're coming to the last few minutes. So do you want me to hand back to you, Nicola, to do the closing?
Yes, thank you. Such a massively rich conversation, and everybody's just engaged in it so enthusiastically. So thank you to everybody who's here. But I've got one last question, Jo and Shirley. Same question to both of you, actually. What are you yourselves taking from this session?
Who's going first, Shirley? I go. Well, because mine are sort of easy. I've been talking about them through the whole session. One is really being amazed that I didn't want to bring something harsh with me today. And I really getting that is something to do with me today. Might not be me tomorrow, but it is me today, and how I might need to attend to that as I go into other supervision sessions during the day. But the other thing that I really noticed was a breath before my name, Jo. And I thought, gosh, I never noticed I did that before. And so I really want to look at that. Like, what's that breath there? So they're my two things. Over to you, Shirley.
Well, I've really loved this session. It's been so enjoyable, really. There's the way that everyone has contributed and interacted with us today. So thank you, everybody, for that. There's so many different layers to what's happened in this hour and a half. Really, I don't know quite where to start of saying what I'm learning for myself, other than two things maybe are in my mind right now, is to go with the flow. Jo and I came to this session very much just saying, let's see how the conversation goes. We'll have a kick-off check-in and see where that leads. And look what happened. This was pretty impromptu in lots of ways, wasn't it, Jo? It's so that's one big learning for me, of having the courage just to be and see what happens. And the other was I very sneakily invited in a little bit of humour to myself just before we started, because I thought, if this all goes belly up or goes totally wrong, we're just going to laugh about it. And there has been quite a lot of, I felt really uplifted, and it's been a fun session to do. So thank you.
Well, it's been wonderful to have you both back here, and thank you very much on behalf of everybody here and on behalf of the EMCC Global.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.